Seems there was a grandmother who was giving directions to her grown grandson who was coming to visit her for the first time in a couple of years. He moved away. And so she said to him, "You come to the front door of the apartment building and you'll see that I'm in apartment 14T, or 14T, yeah, that's it, 14T. And then she continued, "There's a big panel at the door at the front entrance. And with your elbow, you push the button for 14T and I'll buzz you in. And then when you come inside, you'll see to your right an elevator. And you push the button with your elbow and come up to the 14th floor. You get inside, push 14 with your elbow, come up to the 14th floor. You get off the elevator and I'm over to the right. And you'll come to my door and push the button on my door with your elbow and I'll let you in." He says, "That's great, Grandma, I understand everything, but why do you want me to push everything with my elbow? I don't understand." And she said to him, "You're coming empty-handed?" And I share that with you because it reminds me of this idea of we're never empty-handed when it comes to approaching life and living life to the fullest, the maximum, if you will, because we've all been granted or given, if you will, these spiritual gifts, spiritual powers of love and peace and discernment, spiritual powers that we're endowed with, a spiritual power of choice in everything that we think, say, and do. And so all we have to do, friends, is really to, push the button. So what button am I pushing today? The button that pushes toward spiritual freedom, the button that pushes towards recognizing our own inner power, the dimension of that button that frees us when we allow and embrace forgiveness. And so I welcome you who are watching on our YouTube channel, Unity of Monroe, and those who are gathered here on this Sunday to part 2 of our Summer Sunday series, and I love saying it, Summer Sunday series, Embrace Forgiveness. And again, an embracement or an embracing is a taking on, a hugging. It's a dimension of mind and spirit and soul where we become forgiveness in everything that we think, say, and do. Now, Carol is going to be speaking next Sunday, and I'll wrap this up on the 30th of August. So it's a 4-part series. And some of you may think or say, "Well, wait a minute, Greg, do we really need 4 Sunday lessons in a row about forgiveness? Maybe once or twice a year or once a year to embrace forgiveness or talk about this idea?" But think about it, because we've all gone through times in our life, maybe it's right now, or something we've come through. And we've all had those moments where we wanted to embrace forgiveness, but we thought, I don't know if I want to forgive that person or that particular situation. Or maybe we work toward trying to find a solution, but we recognize that maybe we've been hurt so deeply. We think, well, if I somehow embrace forgiveness, I'm letting them off the hook. I'm letting them get away with whatever they did or didn't do. And sometimes that's part of the human condition, the human kind of consciousness that says, I'm going to hold out, thinking that somehow I'm hurting you, and yet we know the truth. And the depth of the truth is that we're only hurting who we are, our own self. Or maybe we've thought of forgiving someone. We had a thoughtful moment. We felt that sense of, in that particular experience, of a healing that took place. And a week, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, or a year later, we think about that person or that situation, and what happens in our stomach? Maybe we start getting churned up again. Ooh. So to me, forgiveness has never been a one-off thing, although it can, and it often does. When we have certain situations, we can forgive, and that's it. But to me, forgiveness is a matter of recognizing that there's a lot of steps that we have to take. And in those steps, we are granted or we're gifted or we're enlarged in some way. But sometimes we get into the human condition, do we not? where we think as the world does. Don't offer forgiveness. Don't forgive and forget. Or we think in terms of the old biblical imperative, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. You did that to me, and now I'm going to do this to you. And the gifts and the powers that we have of Spirit say to us, rise up who you are as a child of God. Forgiveness is really about understanding not only this ability that we have to forgive ourselves, but to forgive and reach out to others and say, I forgive you. Or to reach out and say, will you forgive me? That's a challenge, is it not? To say to somebody, I messed up. But I'm not going to hold that over myself. I'm going to ask for forgiveness and then move forward. We try to find that unity or connection with God, saying somehow that, I have to ask God for this forgiveness. I've said this before, that God is not about or not into the forgiveness business. God is forgiveness. God is love. And love is an unconditional quality of what Spirit is. So there cannot be, you're hearing me on this, there cannot be an unforgiveness in God. Why? Because God's grace says it's unconditional. Oh yeah, there are moments, are there not, when we're off in that far country, as it says in the prodigal story. We're way out of line or out of sorts with God or with our own spirit. And yet the moment we turn, we affirm a new consciousness, a new thought, a new idea. We turn, we find that moment where we come back to. And it's all tempered with what it means to be a forgiving soul. Eric Butterworth, longtime Unity minister and author, said this. He said, God is forgiveness, so there is no unforgiveness in God. Love is omnipresent in us and through us and as us. So love is omnipresent. It is the level of thought that sets the person at cross purposes with God. And only by changing one's thoughts can one find forgiveness. How do I change my thoughts concerning somebody, concerning some soul? Changing one's thoughts, like doing the work that's necessary to let that person sit in our thoughts and our hearts without being disturbed, without our soul being changed. To have, as I said last week, an attitudinal adjustment. Kind of sounds like a chiropractic thing, does it not? Ooh, I'm going to have an attitudinal adjustment. But there's such a thing as having an attitudinal adjustment towards something. And finding and recognizing the unconditional grace of God as I turn away from that sense of holding someone over here. You are the problem. And then recognizing that there is healing in the moment we allow that grace of God, that grace and energy of God to come to us and through us, and to have that connection. In the language of Jesus, the Aramaic traditional languages I shared with you last week, forgiveness is truly about these three things: to cancel, to untie, and to let loose. To embrace forgiveness means I cancel out enmity or pain or suffering in my heart. I untie, I loose it and let it go. Because it no longer controls who and what I am or where I am in consciousness. There's many books written about forgiveness, but when we go back to almost 2,000 years ago, the early Christian monks in the Wisdom of the Desert Fathers wrote about forgiveness often and quite emphatically about how important it was to demonstrate this in one's life. In the Wisdom of the Desert Fathers is a story about how one gets over their past transgressions. And in the story, the the head abbot, whatever it was, that person in charge, demonstrated it by grabbing a well-worn basket, a basket that had holes in it. And he attempted to show how, as he called it, our sins, the sins of thoughtlessness, of unforgiving thoughts, or those transgressions, as he poured the sand into the basket with the holes, and as he walked past everybody, what happened? The sand ran out of the basket. And so the basket represented those situations in our life, and we have those moments of transgression, but it's all behind us. And when they asked him and they questioned this on him, and they said, "Why do you do this, Father? What is the reason behind this?" The old man said, "My sins are running out behind me, yet I do not see them." He learned from them. He followed that sense of grace, if you will, like we all are called to do. Those past transgressions, we don't allow them to have that power over us. We are gaining from it, and we grow from it, and we learn from it as a teachable opportunity. But it's the recognition that it's all called to be sifted away, to be let go, to be untied, to be canceled, if you will. One of the most, I think, misunderstood statements of Jesus from the New Testament talks about how we sometimes embrace these foe-like thoughts, F-O-E. The thoughts where we hold ourselves down, or we have that unforgiving thought. And he says in the book of Matthew 10:36, "And a man's foe, woman's foes, shall be they of their own household." And I think this has been very much misunderstood, misapplied, misinterpreted, because we think of it as something out here. A man's foes will be those of the family you came from, like my mom. I made her my foe. Maybe you had that situation as well. And we can see it from that perspective, but we can see it symbolically or metaphysically as well, because a house represents something very significant. It is all of what you are as consciousness. It is all of what you are about what you are mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So you think of house, that a man's foes shall be those of their consciousness, the way they hold things and see life itself. And when I hold foe-like thoughts or ideas or consciousness, that's an opportunity for healing. That's an opportunity for raising ourselves up and finding that key idea of what forgiveness can be. It's very easy to find a sense of resentment for something we're going through, or a misstep that we did or someone else did. And it's about, it's that person over here. They're the one. And this is not to point fingers at ourselves, but it's just to recognize that everything that we see out here and we project is caused by our thoughts, our feelings, and our emotions. All of that plays into that. So those are our own household, or of our own household. Our emotions, our mental state, which is anytime I have a sense of disunity with anyone, whether it's Jen or Carol or Carl or anyone, or someone like you, or any situation, that it is an opportunity for healing right in that moment. Because we want to heal, as I said last week, those historical moments that we grow through and go through. The historical moments, you know what I mean by that? We're holding on to that past remembrance. Somebody did this to me. I still feel disturbed. Many of you are familiar with the poet Maya Angelou, and Maya Angelou wrote often about this. In case you didn't know this as well, she had studied to become a licensed Unity teacher at Eric Butterworth Center in New York City. And Maya Angelou said, "History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived. But if faced with courage, need not be lived again." What do you think she means by that? It's courage, recognizing that, I went through this thing. Am I going to go through it again and again and again? Or am I going to grow from it, learn from it? Not live again, but to live fully and freely and functionally. And so with that idea in mind, that thought, again, we say, it's the projection out here. Every time we come to that moment, oh, that's the person that caused me pain. Perhaps in that moment. Now, guess what? We have the opportunity for healing and harmony. I've talked with people over the years, and maybe some of you as well, and sometimes we hold on to, I'll own this too, held on to what my mom did. And maybe that's okay up to the age of, 18? I was 19 when I left home. And then it comes to a point where you become a little more wise and enlightened. You grow a little bit, and you realize that now it's the opportunity for me to see the bigger picture, the wider picture, and to say, this is who I am, and I grow through that, and I understand. I understand those moments. Our history is not between two people, but it's between our own consciousness, our own household of the mind and the spirit and the soul. There's been a lot of scientific research about this idea of how forgiveness is freeing. This is like something that, they've been studying in the past 20 or 30 or 40 years, but Unity's been talking about it since the 1880s, this idea of how we are connected. And if I hold on to an unforgiving thought, what happens? My life is not as full and rich, and sometimes it's unhealthy. There's no harmony there. And we know that forgiveness, on the other hand, offers the benefits of what? Peace of mind, serenity, a quickening of the heart, a lower heart rate, if you will. Connection in all of our relationships, fewer depressed moments, fewer and fewer. The more we own that sense of we are the keys to unlocking the power of forgiveness, greater spiritual well-being. So when we do an experiment, if you will, in forgiveness this day, a little short question, if you will, about maybe there's somebody you hold in your heart right now, in your thoughts. Maybe it's somebody that's a key person in your life or was a key person in your life. Could have been someone who is now since passed. Or maybe it was that person you grew up with, that older sibling that maybe kind of goaded you or tortured you or did whatever they did. Or maybe it's just somebody you ran into recently, or they ran into you, you know what I mean by that. And to do what I've said this before, I think this is an important thing in learning the capacity and the value of forgiveness. And I've shared this over the years, this idea of allowing them to have free passage in your mind and your thoughts and your heart. So think about that person. Maybe those of you who are watching, think about a person. Maybe it's somebody that you're close to, somebody right here. Maybe it's somebody where you are watching this. To allow them to have free passage in your mind and your heart. And what do I mean by that? Free passage. When you think of that person, what comes up? I'm thinking, okay, let's go back to the story about my mom. I'm thinking about her. Do I allow her free passage? In other words, free passage to me is this idea about, do I see only the highest and best for that soul, especially if they're living? Do I see the highest and best if that person is no longer with us in their ascent and their growth in life, in the evolution of life? Free passage is about not being jumbled up. Because oftentimes when we don't allow somebody to have free passage, like say for instance, Jen, if I was not to allow you to have free passage in my mind, something you did or didn't do to me, and I got a little disturbed about that, again, that to me is an opportunity for what? Healing. A healing moment. So we take it into a time of quiet and contemplation. We ask for and know that there's healing there, so that this next opportunity will be a free passage opportunity. So it's not always easy to do, to recognize that when someone disturbs our soul, it's really about allowing that disturbance within and not about out here. What is out here is just simply a catalyst, an opportunity for healing and growth. Free passage. Free passage is important to remember, to recognize that we can experience that which we wish to experience, which is the grace of God. That which we desire to experience, which is not only that person's highest and best, but our own and our loved ones. To recognize that we can live from that building of what unforgiveness is all about. To embrace forgiveness is really an art of releasing what? Our past, of letting that go. To be empowered by our past and to be empowered in the growth of connecting with all of life and connecting with ourselves, as I shared with you last week about forgiving who we are and about recognizing this connection with God, and in God there is only the grace and the love of God. So choose this day as you will, as you embrace forgiveness, whatever it may be, to work the work, to do that which blesses us in freedom, to embrace forgiveness. It's something we all desire and all want. And to get away from the human condition that says, I'm going to see things only through that human lens. Elevate your soul, your consciousness. Improve your house, if you will, your household, as you meditate on, contemplate, think about, act on, and embrace forgiveness. Let's take a moment or two just to invite ourselves to embrace some of that fullness of life, that forgiveness in this moment. And I invite you to close your eyes, to sit back now and to just take a moment to relax, to get comfortable in a place, in a space, in a chair that supports you, where you sit back with your hands by your side or there comfortably in your lap, your feet there right on the floor in front of you, with your back firmly against the chair or the place you are seated. Take a moment just to quietly breathe in, partake of life, breathing in, and then letting that go, and letting that breath go out. And as I breathe in, and as you breathe in once again, say peace. And as you breathe out, say, be still. Peace. Be still. I know, loving Spirit, that in this most positive reflection, there is a connection, a wholeness, an ability to rise up this day, to embrace all that life is given. And I know that whatever disconnect I may feel in life often comes back to, am I willing, ready to make that choice to embrace forgiveness? On this wonderful life journey, I know that I will have many opportunities to let my light shine, to let my soul be free, to choose this day who and what I will serve. Am I choosing and serving the power of understanding and forgiveness? Or am I choosing that consciousness of old, of thinking that somehow I am keeping someone in that prison of my mind and heart? And yet I know, loving Spirit, that the true unfree moment is when I choose not to embrace forgiveness. There is a soul directive right now, awaiting our choice, our decision. It may rest upon our heart, our mind at this moment. It may be that which is to be this week. It may be in a moment of reflection as we lay our head down to rest. It may be in a simple, quiet moment where we make the choice, we have the decision before us to embrace the forgiving power of grace. We forgive ourselves. We forgive others. The essence and the power of what it means to forgive means simply to give for whatever it is that we perceive as an injustice, a pain, or a hurt. So I choose this day to give for whatever I'm holding on to, whatever may be this week, this day. And as I quietly move into silence and reflection, I envision that warm glow of forgiveness from head to toe, emanating throughout my household, my life, and in the connection I have with all of creation. In the silence. I take this opportunity to bless my awareness, my household, my consciousness, as I embrace forgiveness, so that I may be quickened in whatever choices and decisions I must make this week. I partake of the power of grace and understanding. and as I forgive, I am set free. So I say thank you, loving Spirit, for it is established this day as I embrace forgiveness.